Oh, it's now streaming live on YouTube. We're great to go.
Okay.
Well,
Just give me 1 second, Mayor, if you would,
all right.
so I can start the recording on Zoom. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, welcome everyone to the work session of April 21st. Let's do a roll call, starting with Councilwoman Meekum.
Present.
Councilman McEwen.
Present.
Councilwoman Ivy. Present, I think. We saw her, didn't we? Maybe she's muted.
She's here.
Her video looks frozen. Or she's really, really still.
Councilman Ince.
I'm here.
And Councilwoman Fillmore. I thought she was on too. So are we having trouble with Councilwoman Fillmore and Councilwoman Ivy hearing us?
I saw Stephanie smile at my very, very still joke, but I think she's got some connection issues.
Do you hear us, Councilwoman Ivy? And Councilwoman Fillmore is not checked in at all?
She's here. She's just, I don't know that she can respond or what's going on.
Can you guys hear me?
There she is. Can you hear us, Councilwoman Fillmore?
Hello? Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Okay, we can hear you. You can hear us, Tammy?
Yeah, I've been able to hear you all along. I don't know why you weren't
Wonderful.
hearing me.
Okay. So
Okay,
we
great.
might be, so we may have some issues with Councilwoman Ivy, it sounds like. But
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
yeah, we got you. Perfect.
You cut your video and you got the bandwidth back, it sounds like.
All right. We got all four or all five, excuse me. First item of business is a budget discussion, and obviously this is facilitated by events of recent weeks where our staff has been worked hard, and I've talked with Brent on numerous occasions about this and trying to refine what revenue projections are, and which in turn affects our expense on our budget. So I think we have the finance director, Jacob Smith, who will present this. I'm assuming Jacob's there, and Jacob, as y'all may know, has recently married. So congrats, Jacob. So take it away.
All right. Well, what a difference a month makes, doesn't it? So just real quick, you all received the memo that we sent out last week, kind of explaining the differences between what we presented in March and what we have before you tonight. I have a few things that I need from the council and from the mayor. Of course, you know, by state law, we're required to pass a tentative budget, which is a working budget, the first meeting in May. So there's some direction that I'm going to need based on what we're presenting tonight, so that we can present that budget and have a public hearing on that the first meeting that we have in May. So just keep that in mind as we go through this and our discussions. Just real quick, going over revenues, we've cut the revenues quite a bit. When it comes to our sales tax based ones, sales tax, wrap tax, and our transportation tax, instead of having a 2.5 or whatever the increase was, we have done a 30% decrease in those tax revenues. And then there's some other related revenues to this COVID slowdown. Court is one of them. So we see a reduction in revenue in court. And there's some miscellaneous that has to do with licenses, some building and inspection, those sorts of things. And then, of course, we do also see a little bit of a slowdown. I talked about the transportation fund, and that's mainly due to, you know, well, two things. First of all, the drop in the price, and as well as use has been cut. I mean, you look at the freeway, right, Lisa? You can see the freeway. There's not a whole lot going on there. So we've been told that commuter traffic is down. When it comes to the trucks, there hasn't been much of a reduction. So we're still looking at maybe a 30% drop. So to compensate for that, we're talking about $1.8 million of revenue that we've cut out of the budget that was proposed in March, in order to handle that cut in revenue. I sent you the capital equipment and project list, the one that we do.
Can I ask a question, Jake?
Yeah.
That $1.8 million, what percentage is that of the original? About 10, 12%?
Well, our original budget was 10 million, so it's about 18. So it's about
a little higher than that. Okay.
Yeah. So when it comes to the capital projects and purchases, the word we're using is we're deferring these expenses. Every single one. There's a few of them that are more of an ongoing type purchase, like the snowplow blades, computers. When computers go out, we need to have some money for those. And then there was the dump truck, or the bobtail that you guys approved about a month and a half ago to purchase. So we still have that on the books. We have that obligation. But other than that, in the general fund, we've got those. Enterprise fund, everything is still whole. Obviously, we have reduced the revenue there slightly, because of delinquent accounts, have compensated for that. But that really has an impact on the projects that we can do. The projects that we'll work with Kevin and Randy to figure out for the next spring, summer. Hopefully revenues will be have recovered by then, and we'll have as much as we were hoping for before.
Jake, can I ask about you came up with the 30%? Was that based on what happened in 08?
No, it's kind of a consensus number, and Brant, you correct me. It's kind of been a discussion that we've had with the other city managers in the area, and Wasatch Front. The consensus is it could be as bad as 30 to 40% in the cut in the sales tax predominantly. Luckily, we don't have to worry about the transient tax or the other tourism related taxes. That doesn't affect us because those are even worse. But yeah, the consensus is going to be 30 to 40. We're planning on about 30%.
That is the discussion, is 30 to 40%. We have a number of neighboring cities that are proposing a 40% decrease. But in all honesty, as Jacob and I were going through the budget, we're at 30% primarily because we eliminated equipment. Equipment we can easily add back into the budget, but 30% is about where we'd rather add to the budget than take from the budget. Budget too high, we spend too much, and we have a cash flow problem. We'd rather remove it now, and if we see our revenues improve, add things back to the budget through budget amendments. And so 30% really is the bottom line that we can get to. And I think we could have gone 20 to 25% and possibly been okay, but now you're getting into a total different conversation with reprioritization of each department that's a little bit more challenging than we really have the time to address right now.
Yeah, that answers my question. I was just wondering if it was like a regional discussion, if it was a economic analysis by experts who are giving you a number to go by.
Every single economist out there, you guys know Juliet Tenner, so they've told us there is not enough data right now to make any conclusions at all of what the impact is.
So our conversation with city managers was just not in this area. It was actually the entire state. The Utah League of Cities and Towns hosted a town hall meeting where we discussed. Now, regionally, it's going to impact each city differently. We've had our own conversation with Ogden or Weber and Davis County city managers. But it is just that where Julia Tenner discussed transportation is going to be a huge cut for us. We've had conversations with the county who have shared their projections. We'll find out. I think we'll find out. This is my 2 cents. Is in April we'll find out how bad it could be. I think April will be the baseline of understanding how bad it could be as we try to reopen the government or reopen the economy. May, we can hope, could be a little bit better. June a little bit better, but April, until we get that data in June, July, we will have no idea how bad it actually will hit. March is really not a good indication because everybody was out. You know, we probably made a good $30,000 in sales tax off of toilet paper, which is great. So March isn't really a good indicator of how you know, what our sales tax revenues will look like. April will be that indicator. So May or June, July, we'll have a better idea of what our impact will be. And again, just anticipate 3 or 4 budget amendments over the coming fiscal year. Is that fair, Jake?
Yeah, that's fair. So
West Jordan has been very public about getting hit quite a bit harder than we're talking. Why are we better off than West Jordan?
Good question. Looking at each city on its own merits can create its own. I could speculate, and I'm not going to speculate in a public meeting, but there's some corrections going on in West Jordan at this time that probably have had to happen. I don't want to speculate more than that. West Jordan is, the city manager is a great city manager. They're going through some changes with their changing government. It could be just a different direction. Don't know exactly what's going on with West Jordan, but our priority here, at least from our position as city administration, is protecting our employees. We're not at the point of needing to lay anybody off or reducing hours. I think we can address the equipment. If this goes on a lot longer, 4, 5, 6 months, then we're discussing a reduction in force. But as of right now, we're just looking to address the equipment. We'll evaluate where we are in 2 to 3 months and then possibly take that next step. So,
okay, thank you.
I think what you say, Brent and Jake, as far as each individual city has their own uniqueness to it. I mean, West Jordan's makeup, total revenues, what their makeup is, a percentage of sales tax or property tax, and that type of thing could be a factor as well too, correct?
That's correct. One of the, you know, this is a good point to discuss, that Centerville is heavily reliant on sales tax. 45% of our budget or so, I believe Jacob has some numbers in there, is reliant on sales tax. Property tax is definitely the more stable tax to operate. If we lost all sales tax, Centerville would not be able to function as it is right now. And you need to have a good balance of sales tax, property tax, but we're heavily reliant on sales tax, which puts us in a vicarious situation when we experience these downturns. So that's where we are. When we have a bad economy, we're going to feel it. We're definitely more elastic than other communities. Clearfield, they're reducing their sales tax by 15%. They're not as heavily reliant on sales tax as we are. They have a greater property tax than we do. So there's differing ways of looking at it.
Okay, so other things that we're doing to you know, reduction in expenditures when it comes to personnel, no increases, no increases in personnel, no increases in wages. We've also done a few things to save some money in there, like we won't be hiring for the finance director this year. We don't have that budgeted for. In court, we're reducing some of the hours. We're going to do that anyway, that was needed. And also in police, they're planning to leave the sergeant position vacant for about 6 months. So there's some savings by doing that as well. Now this next one, the other measures, this is really the one where I need the council's input, because made some assumptions. We've canceled almost all public events. There's you know, a smaller scale 4th of July that we budgeted for, but then the rest are pretty much cut. Movies in the park, Easter, for the youth council going to their spring conference, and any of the other things that's related to that. Also a reduction in some of the services we provide. For example, street sweeping, striping, they would do less striping, and the park sidewalk repairs is another area that we can probably reduce it by half. If you've read the memo, I have some more of them listed in there. And then here's another one when it comes to the RAP tax. You know, right now we have the 85,555 allocation. We have some obligations in the park CIP that we need to cover. And in order to cover those, we need 100% of that RAP tax to go into the park CIP. Not only, I mean, this year, we're going to need that 5% contingency to create a fund balance. And we're going to need to use that fund balance in the park CIP plus 100% of the RAP from what we're projecting with this 30% reduction in order to cover the South Davis payment as well as the Zion's real property lease. So,
So when you say 5%, when you say 5% contingent, you said 5% contingency and 100% of the RAP. So you mean 5% of the contingency plus 100% of the 85%.
5% of this year's, so FY20s, and then all of it.
Oh,
all
and
including that 5% contingency next year, 21.
got
That makes
So,
sense.
okay,
so I have some questions about that. The museum, when they put in their budget for this year, did not request much of anything from the general fund because all of the things they were going to do other than basically Lisa's salary was going to be funded through the RAP tax because they qualified under the parameters of that. So does that mean we're going to tell them they have zero budget for this year? Lisa can show up, but that's it, they can't accomplish anything? And I thought that the 5% that we were doing to the theater was covering the HVAC contract.
I don't think we've ever specified what that 5% to the theater was for. I know that's what
I
they
think I agree with
I know the
Lisa's
cost of the the cost of the one and the cost and the amount of the other are fairly similar. And we did talk about, yes, we are going to contribute to them.
I concur with that. That's what we did, was we allocated that towards the maintenance contract. So Bill, you were saying the same thing, I think.
Well,
I agree also.
Somewhere else.
we would have to the other option then is we would need to transfer from the general fund. I mean, RAP tax is a general fund. We would need to transfer from the general fund into the park CIP to cover our obligations.
Jacob and I understood that that may be a possibility. We're just helping you understand as a council that our obligations exceed that of the revenue coming in from RAP tax with South Davis, as well as the real property lease. We don't have any issues continuing our 5% with the Whitaker as well as the Centerpoint Theater. Just as an understanding with this council, as of right now, we'll need to transfer approximately $275,582 from our unrestricted fund balance. So if we continue to do the 5% for those two organizations, that'll increase to just over $300,000, which again, we're just using fund balance. And the hope is that we, through the rest of this fiscal year, will save some funds to be able to support that, whatever we need to come out of the unrestricted fund balance. So we're totally fine with the idea. We just wanted some direction from this body to tell us that's what you want to continue to do, honor that 5% to both those organizations.
Well, I couldn't figure out why you weren't listening to me. I was muted. I kept talking and you was ignoring me. So I feel the same way as everybody else. Or at least I feel like we deserve them a percentage. If it's not the full 5%, figure out, what percentage we're going to have to do for the HAV or the HVAC and figure that out and do the same for the museum, because when people voted for that RAP tax, they did assume it was going to all of those things. So I don't think we're right to totally cut them clear out.
And Jake, am I correct in the fact that the balances that you're talking about to go towards the park's obligations still are assuming zero impact fees? Is that correct? And we've got the
It's actually
Brighton Home.
It's still assuming about 20. I think I put 28,000 in impact fees. So that is a part of the park CIP.
What's the total amount?
Go
ahead. I'm sorry.
So the amount that we need to transfer from the general fund is with assuming about 28,000 in impact fees,
Right.
not zero.
Right.
Okay.
And what is the total amount of impact fees down there on the Old Dick's property?
Well, you have, we've received some of that. Here, let me just calculate that real quick. So the total amount is going to be about 92,000 if it was completely built out. I think we've got about 10 of that net, or 10 of the units. So it could be more. That could save the park CIP if those all come in, if they build it out.
Well, even if you've got 28 in, if half comes in or 2/3 comes in, that gives us something else. I think I agree with what Robin, I think, was kind of saying, and that is that on the 5% contingency that the council reserves to do something with, I would say at least that we would be very stingy in it going any place other than the parks. The other 2 5s, we need to work with the 2 groups and say, we're coming out of a problem here. We got to figure out what you have to have, and whether it's 5 or 3.5, they get something, and everything else goes for the park.
So I can work with the Whitaker board and Lisa and figure out what amount they really need. I know that they have a historical grant, and we need a match for that. That's that 10,000. So I know we need at least that amount, and I've left that in the budget. And then I could talk to her and see what else we need for that. And then I can communicate with Jan and see what they need to cover their contract, that HVAC contract.
So one of the things that kind of makes this number a hard target is that really our cutoff started now in April. So we've got 3 months coming out of 1 year. And when you say canceling Easter activities, are you assuming that's the 2020 Easter or the 2021?
2021.
And I guess to some degree, we certainly don't know what next spring is going to look like. And there is certainly a chance that we will have some semblance of what we're having now next spring. But at least to some degree, you got savings in the current year that maybe don't need to be saved next year. And if we're not in the throes of a COVID virus, I would argue that our activities next year we should try to restore.
Yeah, and my approach was not COVID. My approach was where to save money in the budget with the revenue that we have. That was, and if we want to use more fund balance, because what you're talking about is saving this year, and that would be applied to the fund balance and using more of that fund balance from this year to finance next year's. It's a policy decision. That's what I need to hear, and we can add that in.
The argument from staff is we're interested in just preserving this budget, and again, budget amendments. If things look well in 3-6 months, then we add activities back in. That's where we start to reprioritize. Let's say the revenue is better but still not great. Would you rather have on 4th of July will pass already, but Easter egg versus another activity? And we might have to prioritize those based on revenue. We're not saying no activities. We're saying that we're going to have to come back to you and reprioritize based on the budgets, the revenues we receive. George looks like he wants to have something to say. Councilor McEwen.
I was just going to say champagne tastes on a Dr. Pepper budget. I mean, you'll have something, but it certainly won't look the same unless revenues recover.
And I think we all have to understand that each area has to take a little bit of a hit. I mean, that's the only right thing to do. Outside of necessary services, we got to make sure that those don't take a hit. That's we have to provide those. But the alternatives, I mean, it's kind of similar to what we're going through with COVID, necessary and unnecessary businesses. So.
I do want to step back real quick and discuss the personnel, Jacob, and that is the one item that we are funding for personnel is the Tier 2 gap funding. we've discussed this before, that there was a bill passed by Senator Harper, that was proposed by Senator Harper to reduce or eliminate the gap between tier 1 employees and tier 2 employees and the public safety employees. So tier 1 employees, their retirement benefits, the contribution from the city is much greater than those that are tier 2. And I believe tier 2 was introduced in 2011. So anybody hired after 2011, their retirement isn't as lucrative from an employer contribution towards their retirement. So the bill, what it does is tries to eliminate that gap by putting a certain percentage into a 401k for those public safety officers, public safety employees, fire and police. And then it puts all employees from the public safety level. Everybody's getting the same contribution. So we are implementing that. Now, part of that bill was employees need to contribute a little over 2% also participate. So the city would put in a certain percentage. I can't recall what that percentage is right now, and employees would put in 2%. Most cities, there was a question that went around all the city managers, asked who is going to participate and pay for that 2% for their employees. And I will say it's probably 70% of the cities have agreed to make up that 2% so the employees don't get hit with a pay deduction where they have to participate with that 2%. So we've added in the budget of covering that 2% and the additional amount for those public safety employees. But what we've also done, instead of it just being a public safety benefit, made it for all employees. So even non-public safety. So in your memo, you see that the adjusted amount to provide this benefit is $25,276. I don't know the exact breakdown, but Jacob, maybe you correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was 18 or 19,000 was public safety and 6,000 was non-public safety. So it's a minimal increase to include the non-public safety employees in that. So all employees are treated equally in Centerville with as much as equally in terms of what the employer contributes to their retirement. That is the only personnel increase that we have in this budget.
I think that sounds good.
And why is this the first year that's occurred?
July 1 is mandatory implementation of that bill.
So it is the first year. Okay.
Can you tell us what the acronym stands for?
Which acronym? I'm sorry.
Say that already and I missed it. What's the name of the program?
Tier 2 gap funding.
Tier 2 gap. Okay.
So there's one other item we need to talk about. We just received a quote. Well, it's not a quote. It's our renewal for medical insurance. We got that last night. Took a look at it. It's about a 22% increase. The reason behind that is well, there's some issues. Can't talk about it in detail. Protected by HIPAA. Let's just put it that way. So there were some expenses that didn't go out to the group that we're going to need to cover with our premiums. So that leads to a discussion. I know I've talked with Brant quite a bit about this, about that increase. We're not increasing any of the employees' wages. So every employee is going to actually see a little bit of a reduction in pay if we keep the the match that we have, the employer 88% to 95%, whatever it is, and the employees' contribution. So I know we maybe we have a discussion about that, about the medical insurance.
So I'll back up a little bit more, Jacob, if that's okay. We did go back out to the market, and we have seen one provider come back with an 18% increase, but the benefits were far less beneficial to the employees, particularly the out-of-pocket. Currently, we have a $5,000 out-of-pocket for family. With the new provider would be $12,000 out of pocket. And there was definitely an increase in office visits, went from 15 to 30. I have it in front of me, 15 to 30 for just an office visit for your primary physician. it goes from 25 to 40 for a specialty. So definitely not beneficial to our employees at all. So our proposal is to stay with Select Health at the 22.6% increase. But with that, we'd also like to propose at this time to make sure our employees stay whole is that we freeze their contributions as of June 30th, whatever their contributions might be. Let's just use an example of $200 a month is what they're paying in this fiscal year. Next fiscal year, they'll continue paying $200 a month, and the city absorb that difference, whatever that might be, until we have an opportunity to discuss pay increases and things like that. So we don't have our employees having any negative, impact to their salary in the next fiscal year. So that's what we're proposing. We don't know exactly what that dollar amount is at this time. I can tell you that difference in the annual increase of that 22.6% as a total is $165,000, $165,830 is that 22.6% increase.
So just an idea, Brent, I did run some numbers. What we could do this year. Right now, what we're doing is with our Med Plus, and I'm just going to say the city's portion, the city with the value plan, it pays 95%, and with the high deductible plan, it pays 90%. To make the employees whole, how much they contribute total dollars, it would be changed to 90 for the Med Plus, 96 for the value, and 92 for the high deductible, and that makes it almost break perfectly even. That might be the easiest way to address it. So if they change plans or whatever, it's still, it works into the formula.
So I want to wade right in on this. My viewpoint is pretty simple. I don't like the fact that healthcare companies rocket their costs every year, but in this year, given what we're dealing with, I do not want to play around with any healthcare benefit to the detriment of an employee. There's already enough uncertainty out there. This is something that I think the city should probably look at absorbing, even though it's painful. But I just, with the level of uncertainty out there as a city employee, I would hate to think, hey, my benefits are going to get worse potentially, and I have uncertainties in healthcare risk coming up to me and my family. I just think it's one we should just leave it as is, accept the proposal and just bite the bullet on that.
I agree with George.
I agree. Yep.
I don't know that I agree quite as quickly. That is not life in the rest of the world.
It's not, Bill, but the realities is we have, and maybe this goes back to where we've been in the past, but we don't have a depth of staff to allow us to have a lot of flexibility right now. And our continuity of operations to me is important. I would hate to see staff members go shopping and us say, well, you can't because opportunistically we think there might be 20% unemployment, so we can put you over a barrel. I just don't think it's a good message.
I don't think that's the message. I think the message is that costs have gone up. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen in overall cost structure with $2.2 trillion and now another $500 billion. We've got significant problems are going to be hitting through the healthcare industry, and we won't be the only ones. The timing of ours is, right now in our face, but the rest of the world is going to be looking at the same thing. Hospitals are cutting wages because they're not busy, because they're saving space for COVID. There's going to be a lot of this happening, and I don't think generally people are going to get that kind of a benefit.
The thing also to consider is if we just fully absorb it this year without even pausing to think, then we really are setting it up to say, okay, it's just going to be that much more plus, future increases every year, because it doesn't make sense to just absorb it this year and then reverse the absorption of it in a future year as much as it does to deal with it when the increase comes.
I would,
So
I would
that's something to pause.
Yeah, I see your point there, but I would counter that this is extremely inordinate amount of stress is on people right now, and healthcare is probably one of the primary concerns people have, even if they haven't been paying attention to what's going on. I think you could reasonably make the argument that if you got an all clear next year, that you completely reevaluate that when you look at the next budget cycle and you look at where you're going to be. But Bill, I think realistically where you're going to end up is this time next year, we'll be talking about a much larger increase that will have to get passed on to some percentage, and that we have to be more participation. I cannot argue the point that we're going to see a huge ripple in what healthcare costs are going to be going forward, and no amount of printing free money is going to change that. But do you put your employees under duress now, or do you share that cost with them a year down the road if things look the same?
I don't know that you put them under duress. I don't know that sharing in the impact is really putting them under duress. They still have jobs. They haven't gotten reductions. I have no idea what percentage of our residents are still employed and getting checks, but there's a lot of people that aren't. And what I believe you're going to see is you're going to see a lot of smaller employers dropping their health coverage.
You're probably right, Bill, but I would counter with those individuals. I'm not asking to keep my water on, my streets functional, and my community safe. I mean, I really look at it as more than the money aspect, which there's definitely going to be an impact. But if I'm saying to those people, I value you going out into the community and doing what you do while I sit here in the comfort of my home, and I'm going to not make you whole. In fact, I'm going to cause you to have a decrease in pay. I don't personally like that message.
Well, and that's the other thing is normal years, we would have probably been looking at giving them 3% or even more. And this year we're not giving them any increase. So if we don't increase their wages at all, but they have to pay more in medical, they're going to be taking home less than they were last year. So at least if we don't increase their medical, they'll be hopefully taking home about the same as last year. We won't be giving them a deduction in what they're doing.
And this is assuming that we don't have more dire projections on what revenue looks like. I mean, with a budget that's being presented to me, that's notch one on the belt. There are more to go if necessary. And some of that is subject to what comes up in the future. But I think that from my perspective, I would be willing to accept the increase this year with the caveat and understanding that as we go into the next budget cycle, we look at what the next potential increase is and we do a little bit more of a share. But I just don't think it's right at this time to put additional stress on people.
And it may not even have to wait till next budget year. It could be a budget amendment. We see revenues increasing, then it's a different discussion. And we go back to the percentage that were adopted originally. If we see revenues decreasing, then it's a different conversation. But it could be a budget amendment in 3 months that says, okay, now the employees need to cover those costs, as we, also at the same time we'll be proposing potential pay increases if things are going that well. It just depends. And what we're proposing is just this first step, and then we'll have to evaluate things in 3 months in the next fiscal year and see where we are.
Grant, with that, the temporary thing would be the city will cover 2% more of the premium until we change it otherwise.
Say that again.
Say it again.
We'll keep it at the 88.
I'm not clear on what.
Yeah, we'll keep it at the 88 for Med Plus, 95 for the value, 90. That's what we currently have on the high deductible. For now, we'll just add 2%. The city will cover additional 2% until revenues recover and until there's a change. So that's a temporary 2%. City will cover that of the premium. That's what keeps the employees whole.
Is that
An employee paying about the same amount out of their own paycheck.
Paying about the same amount for, yeah, their health insurance.
I think it's good.
Okay.
That could be the temporary measure.
Okay, Brent, or Jake, and more on this budget, or
I don't.
do we know? We need to know
I,
and move
I
on
don't
to
think
the next thing?
Bill's done. Bill had a very pensive look and was about to say something on this. Even in the small video, I could see that.
Even in the small video, huh? There's three of you that are going that way. I'm going to shut up for a while. I'm not sure. I don't agree. I think that we ought to be more realistic and more reflective of what we think is going to happen elsewhere. In past years, when we've had this discussion, George, you've brought out information about what the state was doing. Any ideas?
I have heard nothing about medical premiums, but then again, we're a much larger pool, so I wouldn't be surprised if the costs stay the same. I do know that the legislature did sign a joint resolution that was urging fiscal responsibility amongst all the agencies, and that's translated into canceling a lot of capital projects. A lot of wants have been pared back to needs. Nothing has been categorically stated about how we're dealing with employees or benefits at this point.
Okay. Assuming we go the direction we're talking about going, I think there at least needs to be a dissemination of information that we've done something on a temporary basis and we are not sure how long we can maintain it.
I think that's totally fair. As
you said, George, I'm not sure if this is one belt notch or two. It's pretty significant. I did not go back and look up the old number. I was thinking that the base revenues were 15 million, not 10. So 1.8 is 20%. On 10, it's about 12% on 15. Is that one belt notch? Is that two? How much worse are things going to get? I don't know.
It's hard to tell, but at this point, for me, this is signaling a commitment to those who are taking care of us as a community. And if we get to we had this discussion last time when I mentioned the concept of potential furloughs, which is not a conversation I want to have. But when we get down to the stark realities of if there is nothing in the till to pay people with, then we need to start going beyond a doomsday budget and going into what is a RIF or potential furlough look like. I don't think we're there, and I think this is at least pragmatically signaling that our commitment is as great to those who are taking care of us as it can be, but it's subject to change. I think that's completely fair.
I agree with that.
Yep.
Keep going, Jake.
Yeah, well, I think I've got the direction that I need. I'll have a budget out to you guys probably by this Friday. This Friday is when we're required to do the noticing for the tentative budget. That will be in the 1st of May, and you'll see that. But just keep in mind, it is still a working budget. It's just something we're working with, and we'll get to the final the beginning of June, and hopefully we'll have some more data by then.
Don't hold your breath.
Yeah.
All right.
What is the delay again on sales tax revenues? When will we see
2 months
April numbers?
So we won't see April numbers until June.
End of June, 1st of June.
It'll be near the 3rd, 4th week of June after we pass the budget.
Okay.
All right, Jake, Brent, anything else to bring to our attention besides what you brought or what you've provided us in the paper material?
Not at this time.
Okay, if not, let's go quickly. Maybe take 5 minutes or so on the second item on the work session agenda, which is a community garden discussion. originally it was determined that we would not be doing the community garden this year. There's been some thought to possibly reconsidering that. I know I have received a couple of calls, and in my mind, I thought if it was to be done, some ideas I thought of is certain hours of the day that they come, making sure they bring their own tools. I do see this as kind of some people need it, and some people for food, and some people need it for their well-being. I had another member of staff that suggest to me maybe just alternate plots as well too. So there's some ideas that have been thrown out there that if we do it, that those are some of the ideas. So I would open that up and fire away with some of your thoughts on it over the next 4 or 5 minutes.
Well, let me ask a question of Lisa. What Lisa, the other Lisa jumped to the mic. In terms of the people who use this, what would you say the breakdown is of, say, hobbyist gardeners to those who are looking for this to actually be sustenance to that they require this food on their table, and if it doesn't come out of the community garden, they're not going to get it.
You asking Lisa Summer?
Yeah.
Lisa?
I see her on there. I don't know if she's off mute.
Lisa, if that question's you, you'd have to unmute your mic.
Because
unmuted.
That's the one thing I don't know is how many of these are repeat families who come year after year, or how many of them are doing it because they're super avid gardeners and they've run out of space in their own yard, so they want to continue into the community garden and give away the food, or how does that work?
I think as far as repeat users, my understanding, and I don't have any specifics, my understanding is you're 75-80% repeat users.
And how many people do we service with the community garden? Does anyone know how many users that is?
Can I just interject though and say, I don't know if that's an issue, because the issues are twofold in my mind. One is the most essential of all services is food. And so no matter what has been going on, no matter what's been closed and off limits, the grocery stores are still open. And people are getting closer in proximity and not in open fresh air at the grocery stores than they would be working their community garden plot. So number one, it's an essential service. It's part of that essential need of food. And number two, it's outdoors and you're not forced to be close to someone. You can control how far away you get from another person. If you come to your community garden plot and the person next to you in the plot, if you feel uncomfortable and it's too close, then you can come back another time. So I think it's extreme overreach for us to feel like we have to control who shows up to work in the dirt. There's just not enough
Totally agree.
risk.
Totally agree.
I think the community garden should be run personally. I'll just cut right to the point. I was under the impression originally we were letting the soil rest, and then it was not COVID, but then I found out otherwise, that it was a COVID. But I think Councilwoman Fillmore, you just described it very well. Food is the number one thing, when you talk of hierarchy of needs, that it's pretty critical.
Water.
Even if 100% of the people are doing it just to supplement what they already have, and they don't have to use it. I mean, I think it's pretty critical. Yeah.
I've got Lisa on speaker in my office. She was having technical issues.
So I am here now. I apologize.
Lisa, did you hear the question that Councilman McEwen asked? He asked how many of the people, people using community gardens really use it to supplement their food requirements?
I can't answer that 100%. I know that people are thrilled with produce that they receive. I know that probably 45 to 60% are people who live in apartments, condos, or areas where there's too much shade for a garden.
And that's useful information. So Tammy and Mayor, I was not in any way advocating we don't. I've never understood what our usage is of it and who our return users are. So that's where the question came from.
And I was not saying you were. I'd asked the people that called me, I asked them the same question, George. So I wanted to know the answer as well too.
I have a question. How many garden plots do we have?
There are, there's about 40.
40. And I had somebody that called me that was very interested, that wondered if we couldn't do an A and a B day, so that some plots were A days and some plots were B days. And that would kind of keep you every other plot, you know, so it wouldn't keep people so close. I don't know if that's a possibility.
So that is an option, but this is where the museum and executive members of the board stand, that we are supporting the city executives, the city, the staff, the council members, and the decision that you make in your recommendation.
So I'm going to lean with Tammy and say you're farther apart from people working in a garden plot than you are at the grocery store. And we should just say you participate at your own risk, just like you do in anything else in life, and go ahead and garden.
Well, with that though, I would not make city staff responsible for sanitizing any equipment that's there.
No,
I don't want to be having Lisa or somebody else stand there with wet wipes and try and wipe down all the tools. That's why I'm with the mayor on bring your own, take care of your own infection or lack thereof. I don't want to put city staff in the middle of that.
I agree. And I think we probably would need a new contract with the people, letting them know that they have to bring all of their own tools, that they won't be using any of the museum's tools, and that they are totally responsible for sanitizing and touching anything they're going to touch. And I also think we need to add to it that the city will not be responsible for any of the produce that is taken, because depending on where our situation is, you could have people raiding gardens, and we're not going to put a police officer there to protect the city garden. So people are they're gardening at their own risk.
That's a great point, Councilwoman.
Mayor, so from city staff, I mean, I'll say my position was 50-50 either way. And the conversation with Lisa was we did kind of feel there might be some benefit of giving the soil a rest for a year to replenish and re-nutrient. But we're totally okay with the idea of reopening the garden, just with, again, with Councilmember Meek and what she had shared with two stipulations. One is a waiver of some sort, saying this at your own risk. If you become infected, it's your deal. But also it will not be providing security, and just making them aware of that. But have at it. I agree with Councilmember Ivy's assessment in her email, where she was concerned about mental state. This is a hobby for some, and I think that taking that away is a challenge. But again, we were kind of just looking at all events, and this was a canceled event along with every other event, so we're treating it a little differently, but we're totally okay with it. No issues at all. So we are ready to proceed, and Lisa will help draft up a waiver.
Would we?
But include the bring your own tools.
Right. And my
Great
other
idea.
question is, do we need to put something on there stating, if COVID gets worse or there are other shutdowns of the state, that there is a possible that it could be shut down, if that was deemed necessary. You went in knowing that this could be shut down in.
I think you could probably even get away with the blanket statement of you have to be compliant with any public health orders that are issued, because that, it's possible. I doubt it, but it's possible.
I doubt it too, but I just hate to. I didn't think this would happen either, so I'm a little more leery these days.
That's fair enough, Councilman Meekum, or McEwen, because it's not violating a county health order right now to have the community garden.
So Lisa Romney, do we need in there, I guess there's some kind of an agreement for their garden plot. Do we need something that says we're not responsible if you think you got COVID on our garden?
Well, yeah, Brent has asked me to look into preparing the waiver form. Waivers have their own risk, and there's certain liabilities that we can't pass on. But I think, you know, this is one where we can prepare a form that just makes sure that everybody knows that they have to follow the public health orders and it's at their own risk. That's probably the way I would put it. You know, as with any kind of, you know, whether you're participating in the ski school or community garden, it's at your own risk. But obviously there will be some things in this one that's a little different because we're talking about public health orders or, you know, social distancing and varied schedule times and using your own tools. So we'll see. I'm not sure I'm going to actually use the term. If it gets really specific, we can, but I think we'll just say this is at your own risk, health or otherwise.
Okay, that would be great. There's nothing further on that, then council, that the staff has their direction on that. Leah, do you want to give us some instruction before we ask for an adjournment? We're going to have about a 10-minute quiet period, so we're going to be a little late starting the council meeting. Is that correct?
Any questions first? Lisa, Romney, this is Lisa. Do you want a copy of our present contract? For the garden?
Yeah, sure. That would be great.
Okay, I'll send it to you. Thank you, everyone.
Hey, Lisa, I have one more question before you go. Who do people contact if they want? I mean, I've had people call me and I've told them it's closed, so I don't want them to not know that it's open and miss out. Who is it that they contact in order to get a plot?
Aaron Red and
Most of those plots are already assigned for this year.
there are about 60% are taken.
We'll need a little bit of time to get the waiver form ready.
Right.
So
Let's not post anything until we contact these. Lisa's got her stuff in order, and then we can contact those who had previously asked for plots. Are you okay with that?
yeah, I think if people call council members, just say we're working on getting it open. You know, we're waiting on the attorney.
Okay.
This puts the pressure on Bruce Cox and his team because there's spigots that aren't working. They haven't gone through enough water because they thought it was shut down for the summer.
Good to know.
Hey, thanks.
Lisa, for all you do for us.
We appreciate it.
For what you do. Take care.
Leah, do you want to instruct us what's going to happen before our next meeting?
Yeah, I'm just gonna put something up on the screen, letting the public know that we're gonna take a short break. I'll put all of you on mute and your audio off. And then that way you don't have to log out, just stay on and pay attention to when the mayor's ready to start up again.
Okay.
So let's take, let's get back, we're at 7:04. Is it enough time, 7:10, or do you need 7:15, Leah?
7:10 is good with me.
7:10.
Okay.
All right, 7:10. Motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, the meeting's adjourned.
Aye.
better benefits or paying for the benefits. He's self-employed.
Hello, everyone. Hello.
Yeah.
Everybody here?
I think he does financial plan.
You there?
It says I can't start video because the host has stopped it.
Yeah, me too. We got sound, but not video.
So you see that we've got city employees, so we're actually the second tier on the video here.
Start your video. She's asked us to start it. Oh, there we go. All right, everybody back with us? I think we're still recording live on YouTube. So let's welcome, I will assume everybody's hearing me. I'll do a roll call to make sure. Welcome to City Council meeting of April 21st. Just a few minute late start because we were discussing budget amendments or budget changes. We don't have a final budget yet in a work session beforehand. So let's start with a roll call. We welcome any of the members of the public that are out there as well too. So let's start with Councilman McEwen.
Present.
Councilman Ince.
Present.
Councilwoman Meekum.
Present.
Councilwoman Ivy. Councilwoman Ivy. Councilwoman Fillmore. Fillmore and Ivy.
I'm here.
Okay, Councilwoman Fillmore there. Councilwoman
Yep.
Ivy.
I've heard both of them.
Okay, great. Thank you. It sounds like all 5 members of the council are present. Let that be noted, Leah, and that we definitely have a full contingency and therefore a quorum. Let's begin by having a prayer thought by Councilman Ince.
I'm going to do just a prayer tonight. Our Father, which art in heaven, we bow our heads as a city council and as members of the Centerville community this evening as we begin this city council meeting, and give thanks for the opportunity to live in this community, to live amongst good people. We give thanks for self-government, for the blessings that we have in this state, in this city, and in this location. As we meet this evening to discuss items of a serious nature with regard to our community, the difficult situation which we are in as a country and as a world at this point in time with the COVID-19 virus, we pray that thy Spirit will be with us and help us to have clear minds, help us to be judicious and considerate of all of the opinions that are expressed, and help us to make good decisions. We pray, Father in heaven, for people throughout the world that they may be blessed and protected. We pray for the medical community who is trying to come up with either medications or a vaccination which will help to protect people, that they will be blessed and guided. And we pray for medical professionals who are treating people, as well as for other first responders, that they will be protected as they conduct their activities. We say these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Councilman Ince. So at this time, we are going to do a pledge of allegiance. What's going to happen is we can all stand. Leah will put a flag on the screen if you don't have a flag around you. And you'll follow after me. I think you'll be muted but me. So there's a flag coming up. On three, 1, 2, 3. I pledge
I
Pledge
allegiance
allegiance to the flag of the United
the
States of
United
America
States of America
and to the republic
for which it stands,
for which it
one
stands,
nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
one
with
nation,
liberty
and
and
justice
justice
for
for
One-
all.
and justice for all.
Justice.
Thank you. I think that's important that we still do those items as Brandon and I talked about it. Prayer, thought, and the pledge. So thank you so much. The first item of business is the quarterly finance report, and I wasn't sure if Marcus was going to be here or not, but I see a big M on the screen for the man, either Marcus or the man, so one of the two. But so Marcus, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you
All
hear
right.
me?
Yep.
I can hear you. Can everyone else?
Okay,
Yeah.
there we go.
You're good.
All right. So,
Marcus, you're taking this chance to grow a beard, buddy.
yeah, a little
Changing
bit.
your
Haven't left my house for a month.
Well, give it to us, the quarterly report.
There's just one
Okay.
question, Marcus. Are you bragging or complaining?
No, I'm getting tired of being trapped here. I want to go somewhere, but I'm sticking around. All right, so March, we're 75% of the year is over. If we look at the cash position report, the thing that jumps out of me is the RDA cash increased so much significantly, and that's because of the tax increment came in March, and it actually came in about 322,000 higher than was budgeted, and so that was good to see. On the restricted cash report, nothing out of the ordinary there. I mean, just the deposits, the theater reserve fund, cash, the DUI funds, the Class C and Prop 1 money. So kind of the same things that we normally see as the restricted funds. Then we go into the general fund. Revenues are at 76%. So it's looking good so far. On the property tax side, we're at 99%. The fee in lieu, which is the motor vehicles, at 60%, and then the property tax dues at 46%. I believe we're going to be close by the end of the year. Between the combination of those three accounts, I think we'll be pretty close to hitting all three of those. I mean, we'll be over in the property tax and a little under on the motor vehicle and the property tax due. But in total, I think we'll be pretty close. The sales tax revenue, we're at 77%. I believe next month will still be okay. It's the April, well, because we're 2 months behind on sales tax. And so the April, May, and June sales tax won't come in until June, July, and August. And right now we have, an accounts receivable estimating a couple of months to show where it is now. But with the COVID-19, I'm just not sure where, we're going to be with April, May, and June. So right now we're okay. I think one more month we'll be okay, but I don't know what the effect will be on that sales tax. The franchise tax on the power, we're at 72%, natural gas, 73%, telecom, 65%. The power, it's, if the temperatures warm up, then that'll go up. But if they don't, like last year, it was a little bit colder. And so it kind of depends on the weather, where we're going to be on that. So just kind of watch that, but they are a little bit under. And then the cable TV, that just comes in quarterly. So we'll probably receive another 25,000 or so sometime toward the end of the year. The license and permits is low due to the building fees. I think about 200,000 was budgeted for building fees, and right now there's around 100,000 that's come in. Fine, the other ones look okay. The non-operating revenue that is at 18% is just due to a grant of 170,000 that the city will not receive. And so that'll be, that budget, that line item will be reduced by 170,000 after a budget amendment is done. But overall to date, I mean, it looks good. Just don't know the effects of the COVID-19 on the last, quarter of the year. On the expenditure side, I mean, things look good. Overall, we're at 69%. Executives high, but the budget's in the management services. It just needs to be moved around. But any questions about the general fund? Okay, go to the next page, and there's the RDA fund. That's where the property tax, the tax increment came in. So we're over budget on the revenue side. The expenditure side looks good. I mean, it's just the contractual obligations, admin, and then the transfer to Utopia. So that nothing out of the ordinary there. Rec fund, the only revenue that came in was from baseball. About 14,000 came in March. A RAP tax fund, again, that's another one. We're at 77% on the revenue, so that looks good. But that's another one that could be affected with the COVID-19, is that RAP tax revenue. So we'll watch that. And there's the cemetery revenue, about 1,700 came in on charges for service on the cemetery perpetual care fund. No activity in the debt service fund. I believe the main payment is in May, so that'll be a couple months away. And then the park fund, we have, everything looks on target. We're ahead at 90%. I mean, the non-operating revenues, loan proceeds, the other revenue is grant. There 532,000 came in on a grant. And then there's the impact fee and the transfer in from the RAP tax fund. The expenditures are mostly the Island View Park project. And so that fund looks all right. And then the transportation fund, we're a little bit higher than expected, 90% on the revenue side. And can
I interrupt and ask a question?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
On the park grant, is the issue there that we've budgeted the full amount of the grant, we collected the amount less what they withheld, so that other $79,000 is not coming in and it needs to be handled differently?
Yeah, the way that works, Bill, is we cannot collect the full amount of the grant. We can't finish it until the project's finished. So once the project's finished, we'll submit and we'll receive the rest of that.
How much more can we expect, Jake?
On the grant itself,
Uh-huh.
it's about 60,000.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right, and the expenditure on the transportation fund are related to the annual slurry seal projects and some street rebuilds. So let's see, move on to the Utopia fund. I mean, that looks right on, just transfers in and payment out to Utopia. The water fund, the revenue is slightly high, but that's related to the charges for service. The charges for service are hard to predict. I mean, it's developers pay the money in so the city can oversee and do projects on the water system. But the operating revenue, line 3, is at 78%, so it looks right on target. The operating expenditures is line 5, that's at 74%. So the operating part looks right on target. Now the capital side on the expenditure, there's only about 19,000 remaining budgeted for capital projects. So that's not much left as far as capital projects in the water fund. The sanitation fund, the revenue and expense are right on target. And the drainage fund is as well. It's 75% on the operating revenue. The projects have been related to the 400 East project, the Island View, and Porter Lane project. That's what those drainage improvement projects are. And then the telecom funds a little bit higher than planned on the revenue side. Oh, sorry, was there a question?
Yeah.
Bruce Cox. Mute your speaker. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Leah, can you mute him?
Oh,
I think we're good. Go ahead, Marcus.
okay. And then on the telecom fund, the expenditures, there's just one extra payment made in the end of March. It's for April. It's not a big deal. But there's been 10 payments. That's why the expenditures are a little bit high on the telecom fund. And on the Whitaker fund, it's right on target, 74% on the revenue side, and the expenditure side's only at 30%. Those expenditures are just the regular admin, utilities, supplies, and a couple small projects. So overall, I mean, things look good. Currently, we just don't know what the effects of the COVID-19 will be on the sales tax and the RAP tax, and then the Prop 1 money that comes into the transportation fund. That one could be affected as well. But any questions or any council?
Let me talk about something real quick, just so that everybody's clear, because this kind of leads into the next item on the agenda, and that's the water fund. Met with Kevin and Randy and Mike yesterday to kind of go over it and see where we're at on that. It looks like there's only about $20,000 left in capital. And the reason for that is we did collect for the subdivision, for the Sheffield subdivision last year. So that doesn't show up in this year's financials. So there is actually 100,000 of that fund balance that is subdivision expenses that show up this year. So when we do a budget amendment, we're going to have to use, we'll use some of that fund to make that whole. We also have, the projects go over the summer, from spring into summer. So we can have some expenses in one, expenses in the other. So we had a few projects from last summer that rolled into the next year, and we had the money for that from the prior year. So part of that fund balance is to pay for that. So in reality, we have about, we have enough to cover our costs, especially the bid that we're going to be talking about next. So no issues there. We got plenty of money in the water fund to cover any projects.
I did have one question about the baseball income. Are we refunding that?
Yes, we are. And you'll see that in the next month's financial. So you're going to see a negative number in that revenue.
And then what's the transaction fee hit that we took on both sides of that? Is it 3% per side, or as far as the taking and refunding?
That's the 3%. And that's one of those things, correct me if I'm wrong, Brant, that's one of those things we're hoping we'll be able to cover either in the FEMA or in the CARES Act to get some reimbursement.
Yeah, that's on our schedule. Possible reimbursement. We're still waiting for guidance from the state on what they're going to do. April 24th, the state has to decide how to distribute that $1.25 billion that they received from the federal government, of which I think 561 can be distributed to local cities. They don't know how they're going to distribute that, the state, but also what we heard from Congressman McAdams yesterday is he stated that the legislature might be working on the Congress might be working on some sort of CARES package for local government. And I could share with you, this group, that I am on that national committee that advocates to the federal government on needs for local government. And what we're advocating right now is potentially some reimbursement for our loss in revenues, not just expenses, but what any loss in revenues we might experience as a city. So I'm not sure where that'll go, but that's what we're advocating at this point.
Okay, Marcus, did you have more?
Nope, no, that's it, unless you had more questions.
Any questions for Marcus? Marcus, I'd like the boxes you have out on the side, those highlights.
Okay, yeah.
I
No,
found that helpful.
give you some notes to look at, so.
Yeah, any further questions for Marcus? All right, well, we thank you. Next time we see you, we hope you got that beard looking like Moses.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
you go. All right, thank you.
All righty, thanks. Item number 2 is a notice of award on Casaloma Drive. I noticed we have both Kevin Campbell and Randy Randall on with this. Was it one of you two that were presenting on this? Brad, there's Kevin. Kevin, you presenting on this?
Yeah, I put together a summary for Brant that maybe probably got put in the packet. But Casaloma Drive is currently underway with the Weaver Basin Conservancy District project. They're replacing their irrigation line. Our contractor that we'd like to award to is CMR. They're out of Colville. And we've got a few good references on them from American Fork City and Springville City. A couple good city references. So we're feeling pretty comfortable with them, and we would like to get them started soon. Basin's contractor is probably going to wrap their project up in the next week or so. So we'd like to get CMR going in the next couple of weeks.
So we've never done work with CMR before?
We haven't. Randy and I spent quite a bit of time checking their references. We were a little bit hesitant, but their references assured us that they do quality work. The second low bidder was a bidder that we were even less maybe comfortable with. But we think we better take a chance with CMR. They've shown us that they are qualified and capable as far as on paper, their references. So
when was this bid?
The bid opening was probably about a month ago. I would have to double check the exact date.
Do you know how big CMR is?
They're not a real big outfit. They've got one superintendent that these other two cities raved about. One city project they did was about twice the size of this project that they completed on time and within budget. So they've promised us that they'll use this same superintendent on this project. So I would suspect that they would just be one crew. And I would suspect that the project, I don't think that they'll finish early by any means, but they say they can get the job done in 45 days.
I'm not sure if it's appropriate or not, but have we asked if they are getting a PPP loan? And if there's any give in their price because of this will be work that'll be done under the timing of the PPP loan?
No, we have not asked that. The bid was submitted before that became available. But no, we have not inquired about that.
Well, and it's coming in below what you had expected, so.
I don't know what the proprieties are. I think it's worth asking. I don't know how busy contractors are right now. based on the news, they're not that busy anymore.
Bill, can I ask your thinking? It would be worth asking.
Yeah, they probably got a PPP loan to cover keeping their employees employed through June. And we're helping them keep their employees employed through June. I'd go ask and see if they're willing to share a little bit of it with us.
I would caution that we go that route. I mean, if you want to reject the bids and rebid, that's a different decision. But inquiring is whether or not they received any funding, I think overreaches. I mean, we did a bid process, a proper bid process. And if we want to reject bids, that's one thing. But in all honesty, I feel the bids are fair, and recommendation from staff is to approve with CMR, regardless if they received a PPP. I don't know if that really factors in to our decision. That's their business decision they need to account for on their end.
And they're already below the engineer estimate. So I think we're getting a good deal.
With the
One of the
conversation,
problems,
go ahead.
if we delay the bid, we've got the road all tore up, and it may take us a week or two to get the bid back out, go through the process. It would just hold us up with a tore up street that's half tore up. So we need to think about that as well.
I would not be inclined to try and get you to rebid it. I would be inclined to ask. I don't know, maybe Lisa would tell me that that's inappropriate. I hear those kinds of discussions going on in business. I don't know how many of you have noticed, the conversations going on about companies who are public companies, pressure being put on them to give the PPP loans back because there are technicalities that cause them to be fitting into the under 50 employees to get it. But I think it's worth conversation when you look at the financial statements and the budget we just looked at.
I get what Councilman Ince is saying, because in business, things are always open to negotiation. But I would never say, hey, we go back out and rebid it. It's just to kindly ask, based on the climate we're in, do you have any more flexibility in this? I mean, it never hurts to ask, right?
That's my feeling.
Sometimes it does in the formal bidding process. I mean, that's what the process is. I think our remedy is, as Brant said, is to go back out to bid to see and put that as a criteria or some other category. But, there are some risks.
I'd rather accept it than put it back out to bid.
I would be inclined to agree with you. Bill, there's definitely a lot of that going on, but it kind of feels the same way as the landlords who were saying, did you get a stimulus check? You have to give me that to pay your rent. It has the exact same feel to me, which I know that's been ringing pretty hollow against property owners who are making that request of tenants. Not to shut you down. I mean, it has the same feel to it.
I see it completely different because I'm not demanding it, I'm asking. Maybe it seems like a threat.
Sorry, we're just under different requirements than a private situation. I mean, the RFP process is what it is, and my understanding is the bid is what it is, and we accept it or we don't. I don't know, I might be misstating, but I don't think there's much room for negotiation after that. Lisa, do you want to elaborate on that at all?
Well, that was my comment is, yeah, we're a public entity and this project is a very large project. It's required by statute to go out to bid, and we have the bid procedures. So we typically do not negotiate after, it's gone out. Now, if we wanted to make it a criteria, and add an addendum to the bid process, that may be where we could have done it. But I think at the end, when we're ready to award the bid, based upon the bid package, we typically don't negotiate down from there at this point.
So with the insecurity of knowing going forward, maybe we do that with some of our contracts going forward then, addendums.
The Lieutenant Governor actually mentioned on his ULCT call today that a lot of these projects are probably going to get a lot cheaper. Companies are going to, I'm paraphrasing, we're going to get a little bit hungrier in the construction side, so that there may be opportunities for that.
I'll share, we're discussing this project, but we've had discussion as staff on any project going forward. We're gonna be scrutinized a little bit more on the need. One, because we have limited funds revenues coming in, particularly in the transportation side. The enterprise funds are a little bit more of a stable revenue source, but even then, we are going to be scrutinizing more. Kevin Campbell and Randy and I've had this conversation of what actual projects do we need? What are the priorities as we go forward? We don't want to halt any of our construction projects, but we want to be a little bit more careful on what we do approve. And these two projects are two projects that are definite needs. The Cant station is the next one we'll discuss. But these both have the revenue source, or we have the funding to proceed with each one. But again, I would echo that if we want to reject the bid and put that stipulation out there, we can. It does cause a little bit of an issue with our contractors. You start developing a little bit of a reputation where you have an honest bid process and you reject the bids, you actually lose competition, which you can see prices increase. Because if we have a fair process, we kind of go against our process, it could create some challenges for us in the future.
Okay, good discussion. If there's not more discussion on it, Kevin, did you finish what you wanted to say? You and Randy?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess I'm looking for a motion about this award.
I'll go ahead and make a motion that we approve the issuance of the bid.
We have a second?
Second.
Leah, you got that motion and second, who thereby? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Looks like it's
Do we need to
unanimous.
roll call when it's that big?
Sure, we'll do a roll call. Councilman Ince.
Aye.
Councilman McEwen.
Aye.
Councilwoman Ivy.
Aye.
Councilwoman Meekum.
Aye.
Councilwoman Fillmore.
Aye.
Look at that, I'm remembering all your names. Pretty good, huh?
Good job.
Thank you. All right, on to the next one. This is a notice of award on the Cant station. Kevin or Randy, is that you guys again?
Yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
Okay, yes. So the Decant station, as many of you know, we've been working on for quite some time. I think we initially started to look at it back in 2016. That was after the audit that was done by the EPA and some of the state officials. And so this project has been deferred several times. It's kind of a larger project, especially for a drainage type project. But we feel like we received two very good bids. The third bid was a little bit high, but Tom Stewart Construction is a contractor. Their office is out of North Salt Lake. They're a contractor that Randy and I specifically invited to bid on this because they were doing some tilt-ups down in the Parish Creek PDO development.
What is a tilt-up?
They're doing tilt-ups, yeah, really big.
What is a tilt-up?
A tilt-up, Randy, why don't you go ahead
It's
and
a
talk?
concrete, they put a mat, fill it full of concrete, and then they stand it up, and then they weld the joints together, and it's a big concrete slab, and that's an approved use in this zone as well. That's one of the types of construction you can build in. It's much more strong and it's much more durable. We're driving in and out, just like we did our salt rack. Our salt rack is made out of a tilt-up. And so it's concrete poured on the ground, and then they take and stand it up, and then they weld the panels together. So it's just a flat piece of concrete with a little decorative reglicates in the concrete. And these guys are specialists. That's why we invited three people that we know do a good job. Hogan and Tingy. Hogan was one that does it. And who else did we invite, Kevin, besides?
Let's see, we invited Hughes. They didn't
Hughes.
end up bidding, but our second bidder, we hadn't heard of them, but maybe they were called West Tech.
Yeah, it was
But
West
we
Tech.
invited we invited Hogan, Hughes, and Tom Stewart specifically, and the other picked it up off the advertisement.
Kevin, do you have any guesses for us on why the wide range? And also, I had a question on both of these bids. Why there were so many of them that were so far above your estimate?
I think that Hogan's got a lot going on right now in the schools. And I don't think he was as interested in giving us as tight a bid. I know that they're about done over in the Parish Creek. They were very interested in giving us a good price for the job. They were close. All their equipment's there and they're excited about doing it, I think. I don't think Hogan was excited because they've got so much work going on.
Yeah, we were very nervous when we opened Hogan's bid first, and it was at 700 some odd thousand. And I think Randy's right. I think that they must just have a good workload right now. They were the contractor that built the salt storage tilt up for us. That's been 5+ years ago or so. But so I think it just has to do with how busy and maybe how hungry a contractor might be.
I think, and they're wanting to jump on the job too. I think the contractor wants to get going because he knows it's a government job and everything else he's been doing speculative jobs. So I think he's got a good spot that he can work this in.
Okay, thank you.
I think your speculation on Hogan is probably right with the amount of governmental and school work that they do. That stuff, the cash is still probably flowing for them. Any further questions for Kevin or Randy? Comments? If not, do I have a motion?
I'll go ahead and make that motion to approve the Decant Station project to Tom Stewart Construction for $435,708.65.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Let's do a roll call vote. Councilwoman Meekum.
Aye.
Councilwoman Ivy. Ivy. Fillmore, Councilwoman Fillmore.
Aye.
Councilman McEwen.
I was hoping you'd say Bueller at least once.
You want me to call him Councilman Bueller? Councilman Ince.
Aye.
And I assume Councilwoman Ivy, we didn't hear from her, but Ivy, we lost her. So anyway, so we have four ayes.
You could chat in your vote.
Put a thumbs up, Stephanie, if you agree.
Chat in.
Quick, make a few more motions. We still have a thumbs up.
Item.
Strange.
Who's that? What's that? Oh, she said
was-
aye. There we go in the chat.
It said
Okay.
That's official.
All right, it's official.
Thank you.
Next item is item number 4 is COVID-19 discussion. This is an opportunity for city council and staff to discuss the current needs status of the city related to COVID-19. I didn't ask Brent who might lead this, but it looks like we have the chief on. The chief, did you want to talk about it, or Brent, or to start us off on this? I mean, I have a lot to discuss. I could probably chip in here, or I could wait till my mayor's message as well too. And so we'll see how the conversation goes. But Chief, were you going to talk about that?
Well, Mayor, if I can start off, Chief, if that's all right.
All right.
I'll give the stats. What we thought as staff has given opportunity for us to have a COVID-19 discussion on whatever. I mean, we're in the middle of the pandemic. We wanted to have this as an opportunity that if council has any questions, but also for staff to give you updates. I know myself, I attend probably 5 meetings a week that have something to do with COVID-19, whether it's hosted through the league or with the Davis County Health Department. Lisa attends a number of them, so does the chief and Alex. But I did want to just share the insights from yesterday's Davis County Health update. There is some good news, and we're seeing less new cases on a weekly basis. Just to give you some perspective, in week 5, March 29th to April 4th, we had 68 new cases in the county. This last week, April 12th to the 18th, we only had 37 new cases. So we're seeing a decrease in the number of new cases. And also the other good news is we didn't see one new case in Centerville. We're still at 17 cases, which is promising to see that this is all working. The social distancing is working. But at the same time, we recognize that this is not sustainable in the way that we're operating our economy. It's not sustainable. So we're interested to see what the governor has in mind for reopening the economy. But I will share from a staff perspective, we're still a little concerned about reopening City Hall. We are working well at level 5, but I'll say that as staff, we'll be looking into how to reintroduce employees back to City Hall and take the proper measures to stop the spread or prevent any spread by requiring employees to wear face masks and other things. But that's what we're discussing as staff, and how do we introduce employees back to the workplace. First, we're going to do that prior to us reopening City Hall. At least that's our recommendation to the residents. But
Brad, can I fill in on some of those stats? Because I printed off the last 4 or 5 weeks as well too. That was going to be part of my mayor message. On April 1st, Davis County as a whole had 92 cases that tested positive. On April 20th, 241 cases. This same meeting that Brant's talking about on Mondays, I've been in on all those as well too. Our Farmington or Centerville was 9 cases on 4/1.
Guys, I'm gonna stop you right there, Mayor. Unless the county has given us permission to discuss those numbers, they're not supposed to be discussed below a county level unless they've told us differently, because that presents some problems from a HIPAA communication standpoint. And I don't know if they've changed that, but
I will share that the county has allowed us to share some of these numbers because it's no longer an individual. So I can't share.
But you've given you resolution down to a zip code, because that's not allowed at a state level. I can't just tell you how many people in Provo have it.
Well, it's been shared with us through.
Right, I get that, but I don't know that that's publicly available data. So I'm asking that we be careful with that.
Okay, I appreciate that. Yeah, it was shared that as long as we have more than one, the information can be shared. But I'll take that word.
Well, I was going to say, did the county update their COVID dashboard to include that? Because if they have, then we're fine. We don't do that at a state level. So I'm just surprised that that's happened at a county level.
Fair enough. All right.
Sorry, just trying to keep us all on the legal side of health matters.
Perfect.
Thanks for that.
I thought it was on their website, but maybe it's not. So we can leave it at that, just out of being careful. They are not discussing any names or items like that, So and they try and break it down by. We happen to be our city reported, but they also break it down some cities by multiple cities, just by area. So. Anyway, to be safe, we'll leave it at that. The numbers were improving, but obviously we still have a county order till April 1st, a county health order, and like Brent was saying, there'll be further discussions on how we open back up business as well too. Sorry, Brand, I just had pulled this information up as well too, so you can continue.
And Mayor, you just said that they have an order in place till April 1st. Do you mean May 1st?
May 1st, I'm sorry, yes.
And is it expected that they will alter the report as of May 1st date? Or alter the order, I mean?
They are looking to want to do that, correct. They're, obviously, we have a couple more weeks of data to come in, but if the data continues to come in like it is, they would like to do that.
Did they say when they would expect to make that announcement? Would it be on that day of May 1st or sometime prior to that?
That was not really said. They just would look at it on a week by week basis.
Okay, thank you.
Honestly, Tammy, I think if you don't hear any extensions to governor's orders beyond May 1, before that point, you can pretty much assume that's what you're going to be at on a lot of these things.
Brett, you were going on about the city and what we're doing at the city. Did you have more on that, or does anybody have questions for Brad?
I don't have any more on that, but I would turn it over to Chief, or if there's any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thanks, Brad. I think we're kind of in a holding pattern right now. I think we've kind of got things figured out as far as what we're doing. Things are working well. People, all the different agents or all the different departments within the city government are functioning quite well, I think. We all have our own processes and procedures in place. And employees, I think, are doing a pretty good job in following those. So right now, we're just kind of in this steady state that we're in right now and waiting for further direction from the health department and from you, Mayor, as far as what we're going to do. I've read through most of the governor's Utah Leads Together plan. I think that's, from what I read through it, it looked like a pretty good plan. I think it's something that we need to be familiar with and let the data drive our decisions. And it talks about in there about, not necessarily flipping a switch, but more of a dial. And so kind of, and to expect that we're probably going to be dialing up and dialing down for probably quite some time. We may have a period of time here where we can dial down and free things up a little bit, and maybe open things up a little bit, and then watch the data, and then we may most likely have to tighten things back up again. So it's one of those things where we're kind of in a monitoring mode right now and stabilization mode. And I think it's going to be kind of a little bit of a roller coaster ride going forward. But right now, I think all the employees are keeping pretty busy doing things. Either they're working from home. We've been doing a lot of training. The ones that can't work from home have been staying apart from each other and doing their jobs quite well. I've been utilizing the crossing guards and doing a variety of different tasks around the city. So I think we've kind of got things figured out as far as the employees go and the department heads and so on and so forth.
Thanks, Chief. Any question for the Chief?
Yeah, I do have one. I've had several people comment about how well the traffic control seems to be done by Chick-fil-A and trying to manage their traffic inside their parking lot. I've had probably equal or more about why doesn't Dairy Queen, why aren't they forced to use their parking lot to keep them off of 400, and the same with In-N-Out because they're hanging out into traffic lanes.
And the same with Twisted Sugar.
Yeah.
There were 5 down the road when I drove past.
Yeah, when I drove by Twisted Sugar the other day, it's becoming a problem. And I actually had that on my list of things to do, to drop in and talk to him. That's a difficult parking lot, and I'm not sure how we're going to figure that one out. In-N-Out, I thought In-N-Out had a pretty good thing going. I wasn't aware we were having a problem at In-N-Out, but maybe, obviously, you've seen something I haven't seen. Chick-fil-A has really got it figured out. That's for sure. And Dairy Queen. Yeah, Dairy Queen. I noticed yesterday that they were backed out on the main street, and
You mean Parrish?
or sorry, down on Fourth West. They were backed out on the Fourth West. So I'll go down and talk to those folks, see if we can't try to figure something out that would be helpful. Those are a little more complicated areas, but we might be able to figure something out.
Yeah, the In-N-Out, I've only seen that once myself, and they have their routing that they normally use, but when they back out towards the McDonald's, so they're wrapping around the corner, and then you've got people trying to make a left to jump into that lane, cutting off that turn. And I'm assuming with Dairy Queen, since their in-house dining is currently closed until further notice, maybe they can do similar routing.
Yeah, I think we could probably work with Dairy Queen a little bit easier. Twisted Sugar, I'm not. That's just a tough one right there. I'm not sure how we could work that one out, but I'll look at it.
Thanks.
Thanks.
How about any of you council members? Anything that you'd like to make us aware of?
Well, Mayor, if I can just interject, I did email Brian Hatch while we were chatting. The beauty of being able to do multitask from these Zoom meetings. He did say, yes, we can share numbers in our own community. I just asked in our own community. I didn't discuss anything in other communities. This is absolutely. And he just says, I might be able to provide more information. And when is your meeting? I just told him right now, send him the link. I don't know if he'll join us right now, but maybe we'll invite him to our next meeting if he isn't able to hop on right now. But anyway, just wanted to clarify. Brian gave us the okay for sure that we could share at least our Centerville numbers.
So we could share our Centerville numbers publicly.
Yes.
So
to keep our council and community updated. And he says absolutely.
Brant, if I may interject.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what Davis County is allowing, but Salt Lake County has their crude rate posted on their dashboard, which is just the infected numbers by I believe 100,000 people. Or per 100,000 people. So, and that's by zip code. So I'm not sure if we are going to allow our crude rate or our actual number by zip code.
That's what Davis County.
That's what we have on Davis County.
Davis County is the same thing.
And then, that would be the rate per 100,000.
So the crude rate, not the actual numbers, correct?
Right. The problem when you use actuals is you can do a Venn diagram and figure out where people are, or you start your witch hunt. That's why with these public health matters, you got to be very careful about the resolution you give to infectious disease or anything else.
Correct. So I think we may be only allowing our crude rate, not our actual numbers, but we'll see what Brian Hatch says.
Well, right. This is the question. This is the question I asked. Do we have your permission to share the number of cases in Centerville? Number of cases in Centerville, keep our council and community updated. So I said cases, not crude rate. Cases. Just throwing that out there.
Might want to put an underline on cases because that number is not available anywhere else in the state in any community.
And so he replied, yes, that would be fine. I might be able to get more details. When is your meeting? So
good. Anyway, hold on to that email. We might need it.
Fair enough. We'll just ignore the timestamp on
it. They do have more information on their dashboard. Percent tested, 3.3% positive. And I had heard that was hovering around 5, but this is showing 3.3. Hospital rate 8.6%, recovered 76.9. So they got some good information on there. 243 cases total in Davis County with 2 deaths.
it was hovering around 5, but the testing criteria has now been loosened. Plus, they're adding in random. So when you add potentially healthy people to the pool of tested, you're going to drive the number down, which could be more representative of reality. This is the voodoo we play with numbers.
Right.
Should we be encouraging people to get tested?
Well, I think it's limited by, the labs. I went on to the state's COVID webpage, filled out their survey, and I got selected to take the test. I went in and took it, came back negative. I can share that because that's my own data. But I think they are trying to do that as much as possible. But and Councilman McEwen would probably know better than me. With mine, the results were supposed to come back within 72 hours, and that got extended by about 8 hours or so. So they indicated in the text to me that they were like overwhelmed. So that's why they couldn't get it back in the 72 hours. So I think, there's still a little bit of a governor there as far as how many tests they can actually do and what period of time.
Yeah, Bill, the intent from the state as far as the public communication is that the more you test, the more you get your reality and your data-driven decisions. Just like PPE, there's a problem with actual test kits. I mean, it goes down to even the swabs. Merit Medical just signed up a week or two ago to start producing test swabs because they're very specific in the design and implementation for approval. So I know the state of Utah has ordered somewhere around 400,000 test kits, but it's going to take Merit Medical some time to ramp up, and there'll be other providers. So the operational theory would be at some point, anyone who thinks they have the sniffle should be able to get tested, but it's still based on the priority groups of the 6 symptoms. There's one effort that's being led by Silicon Slopes. They've put together testutah.com, which is operating some mobile labs. And that is basically, if you meet the criteria on the test page, you can go get a free test. But they're still ramping up their capacity to join the AURP and IHC and some of the other major labs. The intent is to get it to where we can do 10, 15,000 tests a day, and then you can walk really quickly through the population. So that's where they want to get. But right now, if you're in the 6 symptoms group, that's the group they'd love to see. And then, of course, Paul or say Chief Bassett and any of his personnel, anytime they want to show up and brave getting a cotton swab rammed into their brain as first responders, they'll do that as often as they want. I bet you don't want to go back and do it again, do you, Paul?
So the nurse told me I would probably cry, and I sure felt like it. And I was watered up quite a bit.
It is not a procedure you want to go electively get tested for. It's not fun.
Just wondering, there's so much disinformation out there on that subject.
And even in the clinical community, the situation is changing so fast that what advice was given to, say, a doctor's office admin staff was true a week ago. But if they're not staying up on everything, it's no longer true. And people were getting initially turned away for tests when the new criteria was opened up, that they've had to actually, Lieutenant Governor said this again today, that if you are turned away from your doctor's office and you think you should have been tested, you just email coronavirus@utah.gov and they will reach out to your provider and make sure that you get tested. I mean, they're definitely trying to err on that side, but communication, as good as it is, you still have people who are working off of yesterday's data. And literally, if you're not reading today's data, you are behind, and in some cases, woefully behind. It's just the nature of how this thing's evolving. That's why you're not seeing and this is my personal opinion, why you're not seeing a lot of commitments as to what happens June, July, because that picture changes every single week. But Bill, if you want to test, I'm sure I can hook you up with one. Trust me.
Well,
You're on mute, Bill.
the thing about testing is it's a snapshot, right? So it's at that exact moment in time, you're either positive or you're not. And, you know, a day later you could contract it. And so there you go.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
and actually, as I understand it, I could have contracted it yesterday and it probably wouldn't show up yet.
it's the nature of the beast, and as Paul is saying, it is a snapshot in time, and it's valid for, we don't know yet. I mean, the antibody tests everyone's talking about, that's voodoo magic that has not really come to fruition. And this is where it's going to be really hard for all these issues. Like, what do you do with budgets? How are people going to react? There is just categorically, I'm going to say there is not enough data for anyone to say, I can tell you exactly what's going to happen over the next 90 days or into the fall. It's just, there's just not enough reliable data because it's all shifting.
Okay.
So I had a little gun shy to share more information, but don't want to do anything I shouldn't do. But we still got to use caution. But the numbers in Davis County have been more positive over the last couple of weeks. So
I think
Nicely said.
Yeah, I think you're getting a lot of optimism at the state level. Doesn't take too many articles or ULCT meetings to hear that from the lieutenant governor or others are telegraphing quite a bit of optimism.
yeah. So anything more on that? All right. Thank you. Item number 5, this is the minutes review and acceptance from the March 15th special city council meeting and the March 17th city council work session minutes and the March 17th city council meeting minutes and the March 31st special city council meeting minutes.
Motion to accept the minutes as recorded.
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great. City council report. The council member Meekum, do you have anything to report on your committees or anything else? You still there, Robin?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I hear you.
Yes.
Okay. So I attended my first Utopia meeting on Zoom. I got some good information that I thought everybody would like to share or would like to know. Last month, we had 1,100 new installs, or Utopia did. That was their best month ever. Obviously, that was because of the virus, with everybody working from home and students, people having to upgrade internet that wouldn't handle parents working and students at school. I worry a little bit about them using that growth as towards getting bonds, because I don't think it's realistic. I don't think we're going to have 1,100. In fact, we may have some of those drop off once people go back to work. Another thing they talked about was giving all their employees 3% raises. And if our employees aren't getting anything, I'm a little concerned about theirs. They are asking this year for 11 new employees, which would cost $845,000. They would be going from 73 to 84 employees. They have signed up Clearfield. And so Clearfield will be coming on with Utopia, and that's part of the reasoning they want some of the new employees. They listed several travel expenses, and I think right now with things the way they are, I'm not sure that maybe that's going to need to be looked at. But on a better note, they had the coolest thing. It's called Purple Air, and it was a camera that is sitting on top of their building in Murray. And they showed us the screen, which is on all the time, of this camera going back and forth across the mountain range. And the bottom of it was kind of a golden yellow, and the top of it was bright pink. And what it was on heat sensors. And they said 1 pixel that's heat sensor is too high will actually send an alert. And so if there's a campfire that gets out of the size it should be. If a lightning strikes, that they will notify the local fire department immediately. And I thought how cool that would be. And they even wondered if there might be some government funding with that, you know, we could get one in some of the other cities. And I thought we should look into trying to get a grant if something that would protect our mountains like that. And I even talked to Bill about maybe some of the money we spend on it could go towards the, I don't know what they call it, Bill, but the
FEMA match.
Yeah. Yeah. So it
Yeah,
was
the annual match for our wildfire insurance.
it was really cool to watch, and the thoughts that you would know a fire the second it started could really save a lot of homes and a lot of lives. So that was my good news from Utopia. Was I thought this purple air thing was really, really cool, and I'd like to look into it and see if we could get one.
Robin, how much are they trying to bond for this time?
I don't have that right in front of me, but it was a bigger number than what I could even. and I didn't understand, because they said that Clearfield was taking the debt on themselves, but then they turned around and said they were bonding to put it in Clearfield.
Yeah, their model should be right now that cities are doing their own bonding very similar to the UIA model. So that's why I'm confused as to what additional bonding they're looking for on the Utopia level.
And this is me, and it was my first meeting, and they could have been talking about, I was on the Utopia meeting, but that's not to say they weren't talking about the UIA, but.
No, it's all good. I'm glad you got a chance to enjoy some new tech.
Yeah. But anyway, I was concerned about 11 new employees at this time. That seemed like a lot to me. I'd like some of your opinions, because they're going to be looking for a budget, and I'd kind of like to have some input from some of the rest of you, how you feel on that.
It depends on what the employees are doing. If they're adding admin staff, that would be a different discussion, as whether they're adding network installation engineers. So I'd need to know what kind of employees they're trying to add. I certainly don't need any more marketing at this point.
I agree with that. If
There was some marketing.
So there is some marketing. They are discussing. So they did bring all of their locating in-house. They contracted out all of their locating blue stakes. They're bringing that in-house. So there is a replacement, a level of bringing employees in-house versus contracting it out. So it's a little bit more expensive to bring it in-house, but they're finding it's far more accurate and far more timely. But this is just in their proposed. It's not in the budget that was presented to us. So there isn't any specifics necessarily in what they're proposing. They're just saying, we would like to hire 11 employees. This is proposed. It wasn't in their draft budget at all. So we'll definitely have a lot more questions for them when they bring that information to us.
That was all I had.
Thank you so much for that report. Any questions for her before I move to item 7? Item 7 is the mayor's report. We talked about COVID just a couple minutes ago, so I won't hit any more on that. But other than I do want to relate to you that I make besides the meetings that Brant talked about, he's probably in more than I am. I'm in at least 4 a week with the county and health department, and then the lieutenant governor on his weekly meeting. I think I saw George there today and Brant. But besides that, I've been striving to make a constant effort to stay in contact with the other mayors through Davis County. And specifically mayors that are touching our border. We have such a small geographical area of our city that obviously what Bountiful does and Farmington does and West Bountiful does and Woods Cross does and what we do, we all affect each other, and so I've been trying to stay in good contact with them as well. In addition to that, I am in a unique position that I'm probably one of only a handful of our 15 mayors that is presently being a mayor plus in contact with small businesses on a day-to-day basis. And as part of that, I've been in contact regularly with Rhonda Perks at Congressman Stewart's office, and even the congressman himself, as far as what is working with their stimulus package, as far as the individual part of the package and the business part of the package and the governmental part of the package. So if there's anything that you want me to pass on with them from a governmental standpoint, because mainly mine has been obviously being concerned about small businesses and what I'm seeing small businesses. I've got in a business setting, I've done at least a dozen of those PPP packages. I've got the information out to many of our businesses in the city and also other mayors, and they've got information back to me as well too, because obviously what happens with all those cities, as I said, with us being so small, affects us as well too. What else? I've let y'all know that the dump was back open as of a week ago Tuesday, in case any of you didn't see that. And then I had a fire board meeting last night. I was relatively quiet when we were discussing our employees and the health insurance increase, but I will comment now a little bit more on that, plus what happened last night. They discussed with the board members their budget, their proposed budget as well too, and there were some things in there that that I had concerns about and spoke up and was not in support of both a step increase and a COLA increase that they talked about. They're getting their health care increase and their retirement increase, and so Bill and others. I talked with Brant about what we were doing with our employees, and my feeling is that if they aren't getting a raise, that we can put that extra on the health care, on the health insurance, but we just have to continue to look at it. But I did speak out against the increases over there just because I didn't, and then the Commissioner Stevenson backed me. We just didn't feel that at the time that it was just right. I talked to propose that, you can always amend the budget and look for those things as well too. I just don't feel there's enough data there, and there's just not to know how the revenues are going to come out. And I didn't think it was right with our employees not receiving increases as well too. So, that was most of what we discussed on our fire board meeting yesterday. Everything else was pretty standard, just or reviewing the financials like we did with Marcus tonight, and that they continue to remodel the Bountiful station, but that was already in process beforehand. And so they're right in the middle of remodeling the Bountiful station. The other thing I would throw out as we lead, unless you have questions for me, I would throw out any questions. If not, then I will throw this out, maybe have to transition into Brant's city manager's report. I went to see Island View Park and the progress on that Saturday, and was kind of wondering the status of where that was. And Brant said that he was talking with Bruce Cox on that today. So if you don't mind, Brant, if you did address that with him. I mean, it was looking good what I saw. I just didn't know where, we saw dollar figures, what we spent, but maybe you can touch on that too in your city manager report. So we'll go to you for number 8, city manager's report.
Great, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Island View Park is still progressing. We haven't had it updated. 2 things I'll have prepared for the next meeting in more detail is a report on the status of the construction, as well as Jacob, for us, is just to have a financial report. We haven't really sat down for I think 6 weeks since we gave you the last report, but I think it would be good to give council an update on where we are financially, Jacob, so we can have that prepared for our next meeting. They are continuing to work. I don't have an anticipated, I don't believe the date has changed from late May, early June. That is still what Bruce is saying, is that we are on target to finish during that time. So we should finish in this fiscal year. But as far as the remaining amounts, I don't have that in front of me. We'll have that for you at our next meeting, or I could send it actually in the weekly update. I'll send those numbers to you. Another item, just to Councilmember Meekum, the UIA board, the amount, Councilmember McEwen, is no more than 15 million for Clearfield. Their amount is actually pretty small, and they went into detail. They have a lot more high density residential, a lot more apartments and things like that, that their costs are relatively low. They're far more compact in the area that they're discussing. So it's no more than 15. That's what the resolution states for their bonding as they proceed.
And this is the same bonding model where franchise taxes or sales taxes are going to back the pledge from Clearfield?
Correct. The only concerning thing that if there are any cost overruns that might be absorbed by UIA, or there is some risk, I think, involved in the entire pool if they exceed, if there's cost overruns. I'm not quite sure how we manage those to make sure the overruns are reasonable, if there are any. Anyway, that's things I'm learning about, as well as Councilmember Meekum. We're both kind of learning.
Well, in theory, if you go negative on your energy costs, then it should be cheaper. So maybe they'll succeed in being on time, on budget.
Look, nobody paid me to get gas today, though, so I don't know how you have a negative oil balance. Anyway, sorry. Negative cost on oil.
I'll leave $1 on your desk.
So kind.
So is there, should we be politicking with some of the other cities? I mean, I have no objection to them bringing another city on, but it would seem like there ought to be a provision that they can't even bring them on in a revenue, not only in a loss leader situation, but they can't even bring them on in a revenue neutral situation. There needs to be revenue into the existing UIA bonds, or they don't bring anyone on. Am I missing something?
Generally, it's a huge benefit to UIA and Utopia when we have new participants. Generally, they take on that added cost. And Councilmember McEwen, you can correct any of this if we're wrong. But if you have new cities, it's actually, I think it overall betters the financial position of Utopia, UIA, and use those synonymously, even though they are two different organizations. That there are some benefits of continuing to grow the network and add cities on. Now, I mean, this organization is heavy in debt. I mean, heavy in debt. It's crazy to think how much debt they actually have. But UIA or Utopia is not necessarily responsible for that. The entity that joins is responsible for that debt, not the pool as a whole. But there are issues, right? If an entity defaults, then the pool essentially becomes responsible. Correct? Am I on track there, Councilmember McEwen?
So if an entity were to default, then the pledge is franchise taxes is what would be used. Since UIA is currently meeting its bond obligations, that's not really necessarily a problem. The real sticky wicket, if you will, is if you have additional cities joining, at what point does the wholesale rate change back to Utopia so that you're not monetizing it all inside UIA and leaving the debt in Utopia? So more cities, if they're accepting the risk of their own bonding, and basically UIA is being the administrative project manager and operates the network, it's not a bad thing. There's not a really increase in risk. For me, I just don't like to see a huge lag between when a city comes online or potentially comes online and when the revenues flow back to Utopia. If those numbers would track the same, if you look at those blended graphs that they show, or the individual graphs, if I could actually see Utopia not plateau but track very similar, even if it's offset, that would be awesome. So I'm not horribly opposed to them adding another city. That probably will be a good thing. It's just a matter of how soon can we get those revenues to flow through, because
their focus right now is building out the network, and particularly right now building out Layton, which any revenues or any profit, it seems like it's going to this project to complete the network. Once they complete Layton, a majority of the network is the infrastructure is complete. When you add on these other cities, those are additional work, but the bulk of the original member cities, whatever you want to call them, is complete. And they're at that point, from what I understand, the revenues and profit will shift differently to paying back Utopia and things like that.
So are
I
West
don't know how they're
Valley
gonna do that.
and Murray or Midvale complete?
I don't know the percentage of
I
completion.
don't think
on
West
them.
Valley's is complete at this point. I don't know where Murray's at. Really, they've been in that build out mode since the beginning, and they always go with the, once we pass enough addresses, we're going to hit this critical mass. I mean, yes, this has been a great time for them in terms of growth, and it will probably continue as things proceed in this telework environment that a lot of people are now in. I will believe the model once you tell me, or Jake says, congratulations, we just found 500,000 that we don't have to pay on a Utopia bond. That's when I'll believe the model. But until that point, I'm still stuck holding a big chunk of debt, and another entity is benefiting more than I am from that.
I didn't think that either West Valley or Murray were done, but they could be. I don't know.
I can get back to you on that, Councilmember Ince. I'll find out and get those answers to you.
Well, it would seem like, and in the past, when we've wanted to do something, other member cities, I mean, you got the big three who have more than 50%, but other member cities didn't share our concern. It would seem like they shouldn't be expending resources on a new city unless there is some net benefit back to the existing group, and that all of the existing group would be in favor of that.
Well, Bill, honestly, I want to see what happens when we hit these dire revenue projections and cities start feeling the pinch on their Utopia commitment. That's a pretty big general fund commitment for us. And if we do end up short, I'm sure we're not going to be the only city who's saying, we'd really like to know when Utopia is going to be made whole, because we're going to have a revenue shortfall that we can't close. I mean, they get their money regardless.
Yeah. Thank you. Other than that, I just wanted to again share, I think staff is doing a phenomenal job maintaining operations at the city. In all honesty, I have not received many complaints other than maybe one green waste complaint today, but I haven't received any complaints regarding, our operations. In fact, I've received some accommodations from saying staff is doing a great job, and particularly our police department in handling this crisis. And so again, I think we haven't really missed a beat. I think we're still providing excellent service to our residents, and I appreciate staff and all they do. It is challenging, particularly for myself, and maybe Lisa can agree. It does seem like, well, the chief for sure, COVID-19 seems to dominate us, and sometimes we have to set aside some of our city projects, but we are starting to find that normalcy and find that groove where we can do both. But our time was definitely dominated early on with COVID-19. But no, we're finding that normalcy, and anyway, I think we're doing a great job. I think staff is just phenomenal, and I appreciate their efforts.
So what did we end up doing with the green waste situation Saturday?
So green waste situation, we posted a few more places, but we actually had crossing guards there to assist to direct any residents to the Bountiful landfill. So they provided some, just the notification to help residents and direct them, those that did show up.
Okay. Did we have a lot? And I take it that was your one complaint?
Yeah, the one complaint I had was why are we not providing green waste, and how do I get a refund on my taxes for the services not being provided? So that was the concern.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Any questions for me? That's all I have.
Mayor, I had a resident say something to me that you were going to say something to us about high school seniors.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I forgot that in my report. I didn't mean to overlook it. There's been a little movement out there of how we could honor the seniors and still do it under the requirements that we have. Okay. But I don't have all the details yet. The talk was maybe a parade in cars, but the thing I'd said to them, well, that only works if they're with their parents in the car. And so I think that's still formulating. Obviously, that is also off into early June as well too. But I don't know if you guys, any of you have seen in your neighborhoods as LDS missionaries came home. There were the father and mother and the missionary would ride up the street, and people were just at their curb waving to them. So I think that initially that's kind of the format of what they're trying to think to do, but you know, you can't have them riding in cars together or gathering at the end. So that's still formulating, and I guess I would throw that out to you that as well too, as the community is formulating some ideas for that. If we can brainstorm and come up with anything that some way to honor those seniors and do it within the social distancing guidelines we have and other things. That I don't. That is 5 weeks away, but I don't know that and I think we would probably all agree that social distancing is still going to be in effect 5 weeks from now, even if more businesses are back open. So,
Mayor, I've heard several wards are putting something together for their graduating seniors just in their wards, a parade through the ward.
And there's an idea as well too.
That would be a smaller group, so I think you'd be less apt to have maybe the problems of a large group meeting up somewhere at the end. But I know a couple of wards that are putting together a parade for the seniors, just through their wards.
And I don't know if you're getting that from calls. There's this kind of Centerville community Facebook page out there, and it's being, some of this is being talked about on that Facebook page as well too.
I actually have a daughter that's graduating, and I know that her ward is putting together something.
Yeah, the idea was thrown out on the Centerville Facebook page, and I saw that, and I actually responded to it, and I suggested that the idea be given to the senior class president. And I think that the idea of the city being involved is maybe not great, but if it's organized by the school, then they could have the communication about how it would run, because there are students outside of Centerville boundaries as well, right? And then, or even better, probably logistically breaking it up into smaller groups, like, you know, ward or state boundaries sections of a city. So I don't know if that's something the city would want to take on. I would lean against it.
Yeah, and you're correct. I did make a comment. Well, you're talking Viewmont students are Centerville Bountiful and West Bountiful. So, you know.
And I think they're still going to Farmington as well, a little bit.
Yeah, and there's some Farmington as well too. So I like that idea of, like Robin, what you just mentioned, maybe in little areas. And I think Councilwoman Fillmore, you hit on it. It's so if they want to do that in little areas all through the high school district, so somebody's not you know, left out. But it just was thrown out there, Councilman Ince. Thanks for bringing it up, because I didn't mean to neglect it. I just hadn't written it in my notes. So that's formulating, that's brewing. So so that's where that is at. But I haven't had any conversations like with the principal or anything like that.
Well, I can't imagine that any city would be disinclined, so.
Yeah.
I think the only worry is that you may get a large group. You know, you may be creating that, where if you did it in the smaller groups, and if you have the whole high school out there doing that, you are going to get big groups.
Yep, you are. And that's what the county's trying to stay away from. And that's their major concern with large places like Lagoon and Cherry Hills and Boondocks, you know, how they get those open up. That, you know, it's probably down the road a bit. So that's what the large group gatherings is where we're really concerned.
And they may actually have a hard time advertising on Facebook. Facebook is now instituting a policy where they will censor or ban individuals that are appearing to violate local health orders. So those who are live streaming from their events are getting shut down.
Really?
Yes, as a disincentive to flaunt existing laws.
Tammy, how's the rec center doing? Are they thinking about opening the pools this summer, or is that just a total, I have no idea yet?
Oh, it's talked about very, very regularly. We just had a meeting yesterday and I just got an email today. Our executive director clarified with someone from the health department, and we would be able to open after May 1st with some pretty strict guidelines. We're considered a medium risk facility. So we will be discussing at our May 4th meeting if we even want to tackle that. The trick at the rec center is we've got different levels of uses, right? We've got the more individual uses. So for instance, you've got on the ice rink, you've got open skate, public skate, but then you've also got the, you know, competitive skaters who work one-on-one with their coaches. And so you can have only 10 people on the ice, which should be fine. And these kids are really serious about their sport, and it's a shame for them to not have an ice sheet to work on. And so we're constantly considering at what point we can welcome that kind of thing back. And so there's a difference between opening the leisure pool to a bunch of little kids that aren't in school. We don't want that. We don't want it. The reason schools are staying closed is to not congregate a bunch of young people together, right? So we don't want to be the default place. And yet there's swim teams and individual competitive swimmers and things like that. So we've had numerous extra meetings and just keeping track of the changes day by day. But probably if we were to have to guess, the free for all public swimming and public skates and things, I'm guessing it will be quite a few months.
I just want to clarify, we're back to the COVID-19 discussion, so we're not off of our agenda. Keep going. I just want to clarify for the minutes that we're back onto the COVID-19 agenda item. Anyway.
All right. Hey, thank you. Sorry about that.
Yes, I agree with that, Brant. We did not add an additional agenda item. Let that be known for the record.
Well, it's also updates. I think that we assign the, you know, our months for our different assignment updates, but I think anytime we want to give an update on our assignments, it's legitimate under that agenda item.
Yeah.
We just want to make sure we were in one agenda item just to make sure we're still compliant with our open meetings. So
any other questions? Good meeting. Thanks for your time. I'm not aware of a need for a closed session. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Adjourned. I just pounded my desk.
I thought people were going to vote by just hanging up, so that would work too, right?
Yeah,
Thank
that'll work too.
Good night, all.